at the end, it means I've taken it as far as I can take it as far as preaching goes. And now we have to take it and allow those seeds that the Holy Spirit planted inside of us to grow and to produce fruit. And so now it's on you and me of what we do with it next, right? Amen. So I want to offer to you today what will be, as far as this series goes at least, and as far as I'm concerned, my last word on sin today. And so I wanted to start with a quote, and I just want your reaction, okay? So very short quote. I'm going to read the quote, and then I want to look and see if I can see any reaction from you guys. You ready for this? Okay, here's the last word on sin as far as I'm concerned. Love and do what you will. Y'all are good. Y'all are like, just your face is stoic. I don't know if you don't know what to make of it or you're trying not to give anything away and look like I gave the wrong face. Man, I'm going to read it again, okay? Love and do what you will. How's that make you feel? I read that to Brantley and she went, ooh, I don't know. Some of you are like, I don't know about that. That's actually not my word, my quote. It's a quote. It's from Augustine, St. Augustine. So it's not a new quote, it's ancient. So it's amazing that the ancients, the fathers of the faith, would be ones that say that. Love and do what you will. Sometimes that thought, love and do what you will, makes us a little bit uncomfortable. Last week I asked you, I said, did you think that Jesus made a mistake? You remember that? I asked you if you thought he made a mistake when he said that the truth will set you free. And y'all were quick to say, no, absolutely not. I said, well, do you think that Jesus made a mistake when he said who the Son sets free will be free indeed? You're like, no, absolutely not. I said, okay, but are you sure about this freedom thing? Are you sure about freedom? And when you hear this verse, or not a verse, when you hear this quote, love and do what you will, whoo, that gives people an awful lot of freedom. And your thought might be, but if you give people too much freedom, they might sin. Thank you, Pat. That's exactly it. If you give them too much freedom, they might sin. It might be a permission to sin. I have not lived as long as everyone in the room, but I have lived long enough to know that you don't actually have to give people permission to sin. They'll just go on sin when they want to. They don't need your permission or mine. And so here's what I have found, is that oftentimes religion, what we defined as moralism, what I might call as sin management, it actually produces a double slave, a double bondage. Let me see if I can explain that. The first bondage is to sin itself, is that without Jesus, we're in bondage to sin. So that's the first bondage that we're in. But then when we come along with our moralism and with our religious rules, trying to control people and trying to get them to do the right thing, we put them under a second bondage. We put them under the bondage of religion. So now they're not just a slave to one thing, they're a slave to two. They're a slave to the sin, which we did not free them from, by the way. We didn't free them from it. And now they're in bondage to the control that we're trying to exert over their life. And I would just suggest to you again that Galatians 5 is true. It is for freedom that Christ came to set us free. So I want us to talk about this for a little bit, because before I leave you today, before you walk out of here today, I want you to walk out of here free. I want you to walk out of here free from all things, free from sin, free from fear, free from guilt, free from religion. I want you to walk out free. But I also want you to walk out in love. And so we're going to go to James chapter 1. And if you were here through the series, some of this is going to sound very, very familiar. I preached it from different places, but as we read this, you're going to hear what we were talking about was an echo of what James was doing. So a little bit on James. Can I give you a little bit on the book of James? Okay. Jackie said yes, so I'm going to go with Jackie's. The rest of y'all are still waking up. James is not as much a book written to a letter written to a specific church, as much as it is the apostle gathering up all of what he's learned, gathering up all of the wisdom of his Jewish faith. And so James reads a lot like Proverbs. Have you ever noticed that? It has that hint of Proverbs about it. Why? Because James knows Proverbs, and he writes in a similar kind of fashion. He's writing to a set of Jewish Christians. Here's something that you may not know. There's over 20 references in James to the Sermon on the Mount. Isn't that something? So James has been incredibly influenced by the teaching of Jesus. If you want to know where the Sermon on the Mount is, by the way, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, go back and read that sermon, most amazing sermon ever that Jesus preached. And there's 20 references to that in the book of James. And so let's hear what James has to say. We're going to begin in James chapter 1, and we're going to just kind of work our way through some of the verses here. Let's start in 14. But each one is tempted when he's carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then, when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin, and when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death. Do not be deceived, my beloved brethren. Sean, that's what you're talking about, right? The root of sin is deception. It goes all the way back to the garden. The reason that we get in bondage in life to sin is because something originally deceived us. One of the largest, longest running deceptions is, you better take care of you. Why? Because if you don't take care of you, nobody else will. So you got to look after you and yours. You got to look after me and mine. And that always has within it everything that you need to begin a life of sin. Of just thinking about yourself. And now all of a sudden we start injuring everyone around us. Why? Because we try and take care of us, and we forgot to take into account everyone else. So sin starts with the deception. Any of y'all ever been deceived by this voice? Go on. It'll make you feel better. Anybody ever heard that voice? Heard that seduction? Hey, go ahead. You won't feel anything at all. Anybody heard that one? Yeah. And then what happens? For a little bit, it was true. Isn't that the odd thing? Satan rarely tells a complete bold-faced lie. He tells half-truths. A little bit of truth. You will feel pretty good for a minute, but then you're going to feel way worse when it's all said and done. So you're a double slave again. And so he says, remember where temptation and where sin comes from. It comes from deception. It comes from seduction. And the only way then that we can hear the deception, hear the seduction is, he goes on to tell us. Verse 17. Every good thing given, and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of light, for whom there is no variation or shifting shadow. In the exercise of his will, he brought us forth by his word of what? Truth. So that we would be a kind of first fruits among his creatures. So James is telling us the reason that we sin is because we are lied to, we are tempted, we are deceived and seduced. And the only way then to get free from sin is that let the light shine in. That God sent his light. What is light? Light is truth, and light is love. And when that begins to shine in, when now all of a sudden we begin to see the truth, when we hear that, it'll make you feel better. You go, yeah, for a minute, but then it's going to be way worse. You hear, you need to take care of you because no one's looking out for you. And truth comes in and says, wait a minute, we just sang that song. God's faithful. God is looking after me. God will take care of me. I don't have to be selfish. I can take into account everyone that's around me. God can bless Everyone in this situation, there truly are win-win situations. Did you know that? If you take into account other people, and the only way you do that is if you believe that God is faithful. And so the truth has to shine in. Here's my biggest objection. It's when truth to you means a list of do's and don'ts. When truth to you is a list of moral obligations, then you're going to enter into seduction again. The truth is when the light of the life of Jesus is shining in your life. And then everything gets compared to Jesus. And then when the lies start to come, you're like, nah, that don't, something about that don't smell right. So, something about that doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. Why? Because we've had enough light inside of us. We've had enough Jesus in us that all of a sudden now we know. Remember how they teach bankers to tell counterfeit money? It's not by giving them a bunch of counterfeit money. It's by letting them work with the real thing. And as they work with the real stuff, all of a sudden when they get a fake stuff, it don't feel right. You see, if you want to be free from sin, you got to work not with the sin. The focus is not on the sin. The focus is on Jesus. So then you realize the other stuff don't feel right. Y'all still with me today? Okay. And now, verse 22. But prove yourselves doers of the word and not merely hearers only who delude themselves. If we were to say that in a modern way, we might say, the truth went in one ear and out the other. That ever happened to you? You were sitting here listening to me, and all of a sudden you realize, I have no idea what he just said. Right? It was just like your mind got distracted. You went somewhere. Right? This whole thing that we're doing today, there's an obligation on both of our parts, mine and yours. It's on mine to try to communicate as clearly as possible. It's yours to listen. Oh, and then do what? And do something with it. If you don't do something, and I can't do that for you. I'm sorry, I can't go home. I got enough trouble trying to do it myself. I got my hands full during the week. All right? I can't go home with you. But so what we have to be careful of is that the truth is not going in one ear and out the other, because we will deceive ourselves. We will think that we're actually in good shape, because I know the word. I can quote it to you. But sometimes I run up against some stuff. I'll leave it to your imagination, but I ran up against some stuff this week, y'all. And it challenged every bit of my ability to love. Anybody ever had that happen? Is that you run into a situation and you go, ooh, this is Bible at a whole nother level that I have seen it before. And so we can't let the word go in one ear and out the other. Now listen to this. This is James 1:25. But the one who looks intently at the perfect law, the law of liberty, and abides by it, not having become a forgetful hearer, but an effectual doer, this man will be blessed in what he does. Wait a minute. A law? But what kind of law? A law that produces freedom, a law that produces liberty. I want to ask you a question today. Do you have that kind of law living inside of you? A law that produces freedom inside of us. I was telling Brantley the story about a young man. He came and he sat down in my office. And he was mad as a hornet when he walked in. And I couldn't figure out what he was so mad about. But you ever had somebody, they were just so mad, you just see it on their body? Like his body was tense and his face was tense and he was just mad. And I'm like, what is he so mad about? He was mad about God. He was mad at God. He was mad with God. And I was like, what God do to you? And so he started telling me. And what he said was, he said, I am mad at God because God always tries to control me. I'm like, he does. Now, see, some of y'all laughing because that sounds strange to you, right? You've had enough light in you that you know something about that just doesn't sound right. So you automatically, when you hear something like that from a person like this, you go, Oh, bless his heart. He's deceived. Yeah, he don't know what he's talking about. And he's like, God always tries to control me. I'm like, how does God control you? He said, because, he said, I want to drink. I'm like, okay. And he was like, and God don't want to let me. It was the craziest conversation I think I'd had up to that moment. I'm like, God won't let you. He's like, every time I drink, something bad happens to me. I'm like, no kidding. Really? Let's hold that point. We'll come back to it, but keep talking. Yeah, he's like, yeah, every time I drink, something happens. He's like, that's how I lost my license. I'm like, yeah, I know. And at the time, I was driving him back and forth to Rock Hill so he could go to classes to try to get his license back. But God is mad at, and God's controlling him, And he's like, yeah, that's how I lost my license. He said, that's how I lost my son. It gets a little more serious now, right? You're like, oh, yeah. He's like, I'm drinking, and so they take my son away from me. And not they, but it was actually God. Yeah. I was like, oh. And he's like, I just want to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Did you hear that? See, he didn't know what freedom was. He thought freedom was that freedom means you get to do what you want to do when you want to do it, and no one will stop you from it. What he also wanted, though, is he wanted a God who would then come along behind him and fix all the stupid stuff that happened after he did stupid things. Am I talking to anybody? It wasn't that he didn't want God to have anything to do with him. He wanted God to leave him alone and then clean up all of his messes that he made after him. You could just see God just running around behind him with a little broom, right? Just like trying to follow him and clean up all his mess. That's what he wanted. And I'm like, that's not freedom. And I'm like, and by the way, the reason you lost your license is not because God took them from you. It's because once you started drinking, you couldn't drive in a straight line. That's why you lost your license. And if you looked at all the other stuff, you would realize why all that other stuff happened to you as well. This isn't God doing it. This is you being in bondage to alcohol. I wish I could tell you that story had a good ending, but they don't always have a good ending. Sometimes the light, for whatever reason, the light won't get in. But I would say this, and I hope, and Brantley asked me, she said, where is he? I said, I don't know. But I have hope. I hope that wherever he is, somebody, maybe what I said will eventually come back. You ever notice that somebody can say something to you, and it takes you a few years, and then eventually that's what they're talking about. And so I have hope that wherever he is, maybe something that I said would help him. They'll let a little light in. Maybe somebody else came along and they said it in another way, and it would set him free. But he was controlled. He wasn't free. And he thought that it was God who was controlling him. But I'm here to tell you today, the law of God is liberty. It's freedom. The law of liberty would look at that young man and say, I want you free from alcohol. It would say, I want you free from fear. I want you free from guilt. I want you free from shame. I want you free from your past. I want you free. That's what the law of liberty wants for us. It wants our freedom. And then I was thinking about this. You can tell when you're operating in an environment where there's a lot of love and there's a lot of freedom. And I'll tell you how you can notice. It's counterintuitive. Are you ready for this? There's not a lot of rules. There's not a lot of rules. Where freedom and love exist, you don't need a lot of rules. Let me give you a couple examples and then you'll understand what I'm trying to say. You go into a family where there's a lot of love and there's a lot of freedom. They don't have rules posted everywhere. You know why? Because everybody's loving one another. They've been taught to love one another. And so you don't need a lot of rules where there's love, because love will allow you to do the right things in the right moments. If you walk into a family and you got to have 97 rules of how to do family, something's wrong. There's something that's not quite right there. That there's this having to control something to try to make something happen, when what really needs to happen is Jesus needs to come in first. Establish some light and love, and then you can do away with the rules. Here's another thing. Walk into a business. How many rules are there? In a business that is functioning well, they might have a handbook, but they don't have to pull it out and beat you over the head with it. In a church that is functioning well, they might have a set of bylaws, but they probably don't know where they are. They probably had to go find some in order to bring them out. You know why? Because everybody knows how to act. Everybody knows how to respond. Everybody knows how to come to work on time. Why? Because that's my responsibility. I love you well when I show up and do what I'm supposed to do. Anybody picking up what I'm putting down? If you want to know if an organization is running according to love and according to freedom and according to God's commands, people are doing what they need to do because they want to do them. And that's what John is saying. James is saying, it is a law of liberty. And then watch this. He calls it another kind of law. It's James 2:8. If, however, you are fulfilling the royal law. So we've had a law of liberty, and now we have a royal law. And at some point, we ought to be questioning, what exactly is this law of liberty in this royal law? Well, he tells us. If, however, you are fulfilling the royal law according to the Scriptures, you'll love your neighbor as yourself. What is the law of liberty, Ember Church? Love. The law of liberty is love. What is the royal law, Ember Church? It's love. It's the same law. Love is the law of liberty. It sets us free. It allows us to live in freedom. It is the royal law. It is the highest standard. And then James goes on and he lists some things. And I love it how he lists things that we wouldn't ordinarily list. Like he says, if you're being partial, that's not love. I saw something the other day, and it said that as churches, we needed to preach the truth more. We needed to talk more about drinking and smoking and country music. I wish I was kidding. I am not. I read that, and I said, so you mean to tell me that all the problems in the world is if we just get people to stop drinking and smoking and listening to country music, that we'll just fix it? That'll just fix everything. I was amazed by that. You know what James says? What will fix the world is us loving well and learning how to love well. And so he gives us these things, and he gives us some sin that we wouldn't ordinarily think about. He says when we're partial, meaning that when we're in a room, and we're even taught this in American society, right? We call it what? Networking. We have networking events. And what are networking events? You go and hang out with people that you think can benefit you. Oh, no, I done gone to meddling now, hadn't I? I have gone to meddling in corporate America. What you do is you go in and you network with people. Which ones? All the poor people, right? All the homeless people and all the folks that can't do a thing for you. You go and network with them, right? No, you don't network with them. You network with people who can do things for you, that can improve your business, that can help you succeed in life. You go and do those kind of things. And James looks at that and says, man, y'all messed up. He's like, you go in places and you hang around people and you show partiality to people who can do things for you. He said, true religion is this, when you love and you do things for people that can never do anything for you in return. That's when you know that the light got in. That's when you know that you're actually loving well. That other thing, that's just a good business decision. So, are y'all okay? Let's go to Galatians. Galatians, Paul says something similar. I want to go back to the quote that I read, love and do what you will. Now, the thing in the back of your mind might be, but if you let people do what they will, people going to go crazy. People going to do some silly stuff, some bad stuff, some dangerous stuff. And so Paul is answering that question in Galatians chapter 5. Listen to this in verse 13. We'll read through 16. For you were called to freedom. Oh, look at that. You were called to freedom, brethren. Only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh. But through, everybody read that word? But through love. That's the royal law. Remember the law of liberty? But through love, serve one another. For the whole law is fulfilled in one word in the statement, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. You'd almost get the impression that Paul and James been hanging out with the same person, listening to the same teaching, wouldn't you? Love your, who said that, by the way? Jesus. Yeah, Jesus said that. They're echoing Jesus, that you should love your neighbor as yourself. But if you bite and devour one another, take care that you're not consumed by one another. But I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not carry out the desires of the flesh. And so Paul has a choice. Paul can listen to the people. You remember what he called them? He said they're spies. He said they were religious people. They were sent into the church to spy out the church's newfound freedom and liberty by trying to get them all to return back to the law. They're like, nah, there's too much freedom here. We need to get a hold of this thing. It's going to be a mess. It's going to be chaos. We need to get back to the laws of Moses about eating the right things and doing the right things. And Paul says, nah, that's not what we're going to do at all. What we're going to do is love. We're going to love, and we're going to teach love. And so there's two approaches that any church can take. One approach is this. We don't trust freedom, and so we're going to try to take freedom from people. And we're going to try to control them, to try to get them to do the right things. And I believe that it's done in love. I believe it's done from pastors and leaders who genuinely have people's hearts in mind that says, I don't want to see people get hurt. But it's deceived. It's deception. Because what happens then is this. By controlling them, you never set them free from sin. So they're still a bond. They're still in bondage to sin. But now they're in bondage to you. And what's dangerous about that as pastors is, like anything else, like anywhere else, you get a little bit of power, you get a little bit of control. What happens? Start to like it. You're like, wow, this feels good. Like, it's way easier to go and control people than what Paul talked about, letting the Spirit lead them. Like, let the Spirit lead them. Man, I ain't got time to let the Spirit lead them. I'm going to go lead them. If that was it, if we were in a room full of pastors right now, it would have been real quiet and nobody would have laughed. And so Paul says, that's not our approach. Here's our approach. He says, we're going to teach and we're going to disciple and we're going to lead, and we're going to train, and we're going to walk in love. That's what we're going to do. We're not going to take people's freedom from them, because it's for freedom that Christ has set us free. He's already said that. What we're going to do is we're going to walk in love, and we're going to let them watch. Oh, that's far more revolutionary than your faces are showing right now. We cannot control the people in the church. We cannot control the people in the world. But you know what you and I can do? We can walk in love. And then we can turn around and let the world watch. Let them watch. Let them see us doing this thing called love. And as I was preparing for that, and I'm thinking, we're going through a summer season, and so we kind of take off a little bit, take a little break on some things. But when we start back up, we've already talked about just of restarting some groups, and Brantley and I want to restart some of those. And we do this thing where we take a group of people for a year, lead them through the Bible. But it's not a Bible study as much as it is just what I just said, learning how to walk in love, learning how to follow Jesus, learning to let Jesus be the example, and then how to walk out in an everyday kind of life. And in some other groups that'll start, and our goal is to do the same thing. And as I was preparing for that, I got to tell you, I had a moment where I got afraid. I was preparing the message, and I got afraid. Here, I'm going to tell you what I got afraid of. I said, God, I can't come in here and preach that message. I said, they tired of hearing that message. They tired of hearing me talk about love. I talk about love all the time. In fact, when I get criticized, that's the very thing I get criticized for. All he ever talks about, same old thing, love. I'm like, here I am, going in again to do the same thing. Tell them about love. And I got scared, and I was like, people going to get tired of it. And then I started thinking. And it was like different things started kind of dropping into my heart. I was thinking about baseball, because it's baseball season. I'm thinking about basketball, because it's, basketball tournament time. You could have, if you don't like those sports, you could think about football, you could think about soccer, you could think about golf. But I just want you to play this out with me. Maybe those aren't even your thing. You got another thing that you like. But imagine this, that a professional baseball team gathers up, and they gather up and they want to have a meeting with the coach, with the manager of the team. And they meet with the manager, and they say, Coach, we just think we spend too much time on baseball. Like, all we ever do is talk about baseballs. I mean, we get here and we throw baseballs, and we catch baseballs, and we hit baseballs, and that's all we ever do. Like, as soon as we get here, we start on baseballs, throwing them and catching them and hitting them. And they're like, we're bored with baseballs. So what we would like to do is we want to talk about some other things. Can we talk about our uniforms, Coach? None of y'all play sports, do you? Anybody like sports? Can you imagine that? You're like, we're just tired of baseball. We like to talk about our uniforms. We think they need to be nicer uniforms. They need to be more colorful. We need to have a little more pop, a little more pizzazz. Could you imagine a coach looking at those players and going, you have lost your mind. This is not about your wardrobe. This is about baseball. We play baseball here. Can you imagine they said, we got an idea. So everybody's coming to watch the game today. But every time they come and watch, all we ever do is play baseball. So we thought that rather than play baseball, what we do is we take the entire infield. Now imagine this with me. Okay? We're going to take the entire infield, and we're going to set up tables, and we're going to play checkers. Because we always play baseball. Can you imagine what the coach would do? He would look at them and go, y'all have lost your mind. This is a baseball team. And around here, we play baseball. And you wear a uniform, but this is about baseball. We have done the same thing since you were in coach pitch, since you were in T-ball. Do you know what you did in T-ball? Can I take you back there? You caught the ball, you threw the ball, and you hit the ball. And then you moved up to coach pitch, and guess what you did there? You caught the ball, threw the ball, hit the ball. You went through Little League, and then you went into high school, and then you went into college, and then when you got, you were the best of the best. You know what you did? You caught the ball, you threw the ball, and you hit the ball. Why? Because it's baseball. Can I suggest to you that when it comes to being a Christian, it's about Christ. It's always about Christ. But when it comes to how you actually play the game, it's all about love. It's all about love. It's love over in the nursery. It's love over there in the nursery. It's love in Kingdom Kids. It's love in middle school and in youth group. And it's love in young adult life. And it's love in young families' lives. And it is love all the way until you get to senior citizens. And then if I am the one who preaches your funeral, you know what your love ought to be described as? I should be able to stand up and say, I just got one last word. Did you hear that? I just got one last word from them. One last word for them. for you. Love. Turn to John. 1 John chapter 4. Let me read you something. For the Christian, it's not about baseball. It's not about basketball. It's not about a soccer ball. In 1 John 4, verse 7, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God. And everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one who does not love does not know God, for God is love. By this the love of God is manifested in us, that God has sent His only begotten Son into the world, so that we might live through Him. And this is love, not that we have loved God, but that He loved us, and He sent His Son to be the propitiation for our sin. Beloved, if God so loved us, we also ought to love one another. No one has seen God at any time. If we love one another, God abides in us, and His love is perfected in us. It's love in the nursery all the way until we die. It is love. Why? Because it's all about Christ. And if God is love, then that's what we got to be worried about. I can't tell you how many times Christians want something new. Can I tell you? That ain't our game. Our game is love. That's what we do. That's what we do all the time. That's what we do when it hurts. That's what we do when it feels good. That's what we practice. That's how we live. That's what we're called to. We're called to love. And if you want something else, that's fine. But guess what? Don't call it Christian and don't call it God, because God is love. And 1 John says that if you know how to love, then that is proof that you know Him. But if you don't know how to love, guess what? Oh man, I might know a lot of Bible verses. I don't know God. I might have gone to church and I got all those pens. You remember how we used to get pens when you went to Bible Sunday school? Y'all remember that? Thank you. Yep. Anita, we're sharing our age. You got perfect attendance awards. You might come in and you just look all decorated like a soldier with all your pens for how many times you've been to church. But guess what? Your pens are not impressive. Your love is impressive. Don't show anybody your pen, show them your love. It's about love. And so it doesn't matter how many verses we know. It doesn't matter how many times we come to church. It matters if do we know God, and that's evidenced by we walk in love. I got to wrap this thing up. Let's go back to Galatians, and I can do it from there. Galatians 5:22. But the fruit of the Spirit. Remember, if we walk in the Spirit, we won't walk according to the flesh. But the fruit of the Spirit is, can anybody help me with this? You remember that song when you were little? But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Most Bible scholars say that love is first because love really determines every fruit that comes after it. But here's what I want to draw your attention to. Against such things there is no law. Here's what that means. There is never a prohibition on love in the kingdom of God. There's never a prohibition. There's always an opportunity to love. And in fact, you can love as much as you want to love. In fact, here's another good one. Did you know you can have as much peace as you want to have? You really can. Did you know that you can have as much joy as you want to have? That you can be as kind as you want to be? That you can be as gentle as you want to be? That you can be as self-controlled as you want to be? Why? Because there's no rule against them. Somebody might say, now look, you can love too much. No, you can't. No, you can't. You're like, yes, you can. Okay, well, explain to me how you can love too much. Well, you can love too much and then you do blah, blah, and I'm like, that ain't love. Whatever you just described there is not love. So what has to happen is you have to see that you have crossed over from loving and now you have been deceived, and so now you are controlling or you are enabling or you are whatever. That's not love. But do you know what? You can love as much as you want to. That you can never love too much. There is no limit to it. Here's what Paul is saying. The law is always going to keep you down here in sin management. To where it's like, okay, if I got to be nicer, I got to try to control my temper, I got to try to be kind and put a smile on my face. You know that smile that we do sometimes? It's that one that's like, I've tried to read this one author, and he's super difficult, but I love in one of his novels, he said this. He was asked to look at a portrait of a woman and see or say what he sees. He says, I perceive that her smile is broken. Did you hear that? He said, I perceive that her smile is broken, and that every attempt she makes at fixing it only makes it worse. Oh. Anybody ever had to put one of those smiles forward? You felt like the moment required one of those smiles? You didn't feel it? You felt like the moment required it? And unfortunately, it always comes off as if anybody really knows what they're looking for, it always comes off as a broken smile. It's broken. What does it need? It needs Jesus, and it needs love to repair what's broken. And so there is no end to the love of God. I want to leave you with this. We're not called to be sinless. We're not called to be morally unassailable, always victorious in temptation. We're called to be tender toward God, responsible, response-able, able to respond to God. We're called to be eager to yield to every move of the Spirit. We cannot become holy through willpower, through assuming control over ourselves. I'd interject right there in sin management. We simply have to let God be God. I love this part right here. We have to let ourselves be guided. We have to let ourselves be guided. You'd almost think he meant guided, right? And he does. You're guided by being guided, by being sensitive to God. It means that you don't have to be perfect. Paul went on in verse 6, and this is where I'll leave the last word. Brethren, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, such a one in it. Hold on. I got so many notes. Hold on. There we go. Brethren, even if anyone is caught in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, each one looking to yourself so that you too will not be tempted. Bear one another's burdens and thereby fulfill the law of Christ. It doesn't mean we're going to be perfect. It doesn't mean we're going to love perfectly every time. We're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. But you know what allows us to continue is when we bear one another's burdens, when we forgive one another, when we're merciful to one another, when we don't hold one another to a higher standard than we hold ourselves, when we realize, you know what, we're doing what we can, and we're learning, and we're growing, and the light that is in us has to grow, and it has to shine. So the last word on sin is this: love. Do what you want to. You see, the emphasis is not on do what you want to. If you put the emphasis on do what you want to, you're already deceived. The emphasis is on love. And then if you love, anything that you'd want to do in love will be the right thing. And then you can live in freedom, and you can live at peace. Fruit of the Spirit is manifested in our lives. Let us pray. Can you just take a couple of deep breaths? sometimes before I pray, I just take a couple of deep breaths because I'm reminded that the word Yahweh, the Hebrew name for God, seems to have its roots in our human breath. An intake of breath, Yah, an exhale way. That when we breathe, we're actually declaring the name of God. And so sometimes before I pray, I like to just breathe and just take in Yahweh, God. Then I want to walk you through something today. Is there anybody that needs forgiveness of sin? If so, God's mercies are new every day. And the cross stands as a reminder that your sins were forgiven and paid for before you ever committed them by a God who loves you and is calling you back to himself. And so I would say, come home to the Father. And then I would say, is there anyone who has been hurt and you don't trust love? That is a kind of bondage that you can be broken free from. To experience the love of God that seeks the highest good for another, that takes into account everyone that's in the room. That you might trust again in the power of love. And then is there any reason right now that you cannot receive the joy of God? Then receive it. Is there any reason why you can't be at peace? There's always going to be stuff going on. But God is faithful. So why not be at peace in the midst of it? Patience. Lord, thank you that it's a gift. It's already inside of us. The world is simply training us in how to respond in it. Is there any reason we can't be kind? It is his kindness that led us to repentance. It is his steadfast love, his loving kindness that we are still here. Is there any reason we can't choose gentleness? And is there any reason why we can't live in self-control? Which, by the way, is the best control possible. Not external, but coming from a place within us. And so, Father, help us as we walk out of here, every person that is here in this room or may listen online, that we would never get tired of walking in love, talking about love, growing in your love. That, God, that's the very thing that would set us free. In fact, the good news is we're free right now. You're free right now. You're free right now. Let's just sit in that for a minute before we go. So for the longest time, I kept hearing this little thing. It would come up every now and again. Is that we ought to preach on sin more. We preach too much on love. And I knew that my heart was never right. You got to not just know what to say, but your heart's got to be right too when you say it. And so I took a long time searching through the scriptures. And here's what I've determined. Sin is old news. Love has come. Sin is old news. But love has come. His name is Jesus. He's changing everything about us. And our message is love. I heard this. People want their ears tickled. They don't want to talk about sin. I heard Pastor Chris Green say this. He said, most of the time when we talk to people about sin, we are sinning. That when we talk to people about sin, we're pointing fingers and we're casting judgment and guilt and shame. And so actually when we are talking to them about sin, we are sinning ourselves. And so I prayed and I said, oh God, if I ever preach a message on sin, I pray that I wouldn't come from that point of view. How would I come from another point of view? And for me, it's always about love. It's always. Sin is old news. The new news is that love has come. I pray that when we walk out of here, that will captivate our lives for the rest of our lives. That we're captivated by that and that we walk in freedom in Jesus' name. God bless you. Have a good week.